on roses and whispers on
Whispers on kittens.
We're live on both places.
Did we do musicals
Hey,
as
everybody.
kids?
Yes. We did.
Okay.
Did you dance?
Yeah.
Do you dance?
Dance and musicals and all the things. So yeah.
Okay, welcome to True Mental Health. On my end, I'm Crystal Crawford. For those of you guys that don't know, you guys know Mr.
Mr. Sister, whatever. Who knows? Nobody knows.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk Will Smith slapping Chris Rock across the face. Let's talk
spicy
violence. Let's talk judgment. Let's talk the things that nobody else is talking about.
You know, I saw I saw all of everything yesterday and all the points of view. And I definitely went into like retraction mode in the sense of like, oh, this is just a lot and it's hot and everyone's got a point of view. And a lot of folks are saying, don't have a point of view, have a point of view. And it's just like, oh my God, it was ripe with the judgment. Right.
It was. And I just dove right into the fray and did a post because I kept reading all these things about how this was unacceptable, this was violence is never the answer, and he was in a toxic relationship and this is toxic masculinity. I was just like, all I was reading was judgment after judgment after judgment after judgment, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to say what I get from it, which is like, fuck yes. Like, and sure, was that another opinion? Absolutely. But I was like, I'm going to just go ahead and put this energy out there, which was like, fuck yes, somebody actually going, this stops with me, this ends here. Now, of course, there's all this speculation about what it could have been. Is it this? Is it that? Is it this? But I got so much information about it. And I guess that's what I wanted to kind of talk with you about today, because what I really came away with was that, you know, we're throwing around all these opinions and points of view as if they're right. And we're agreeing with, we're either resisting or we're agreeing, for the most part in the world around stuff, you know? And I was like, I got this hit that that's actually the thing that I am creating for, is a world that goes beyond the only choices you have are to agree with this point of view or resist this point of view, where it's like, where's the world where we actually get to be ourselves, where we actually get to choose, where we actually get to, you know, be any energy and every energy at will and get the awareness from it and choose again? Where's that world? So yeah, it led to another Facebook post. So if you guys are interested on my take, you can go to my Facebook and soon to be on Instagram. But I thought we could talk about a little bit how judgment is actually the ultimate violence. And I know you've been talking a lot with your folks about judgment. Like,
yeah, well, because I'm just really getting how judgment. So if we're looking at judgment, anything we've deemed as right or wrong or good or bad. And really, when we're holding that point of view in our body, it's going to activate the nervous system to some degree. And I've been doing some posts on like overwhelm and explaining that it really it's really rooted in self-judgment. So if people are focusing their attention, their energy on what they've deemed as right, or, you know, that they're fighting for or whatever, it's going to have that nervous system activate to match that frequency. And so what I'm getting is like, well, what is the value in that? What is that really creating? Because you can argue that you're right all day long. And then where are you at? How's your body feeling? How traumatized are you feeling in the nervous system, right? Because ultimately that's, to me, what it's creating.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, I mean, I spent most of my life like fighting against, fighting. And I think a lot of people can relate, like, you know, fighting against, I have a personal childhood history of a lot of violence, emotional violence, financial violence, religious violence, you know, physical violence. I mean, all of the different abuses that we don't really talk about as abuses were present in my life. I also had a lot of great things that came out of, you know, that period in my life. I lost my point. I do this often. I guess I say that to say that I don't know what I was going to say now. My God, I lost it.
I'm curious because since like what you were saying about what you posted was kind of a hot take, a different take, and saying like, yes, not standing for judgment, not standing for it, and it resulting in a physical action. I think what maybe some of my folks might get is like, well, then are you condoning violence? Are we saying violence is okay? And I'm wondering what your thought is.
And so what my take on that is like, why are we only giving ourselves two choices? basically what people are saying is like, there's only two choices. And that's that, well, first of all, we're calling this violence. And I think we could have a whole conversation on what violence actually is. If you look up the definition of violence, it's physical action with the intent to destroy, harm, kill. Was that what Will Smith was doing? Was he intending to kill or harm Chris Rock, or was he killing that possibility of that kind of talk being done to his wife, to women around the world? And I shared another post on my Facebook written by this Black man who gave us a whole different perspective on what it's been like to be a Black man in the Americas and to be a Black woman in the Americas, and that culture isn't even the same as white culture. And so I think there's a broader conversation there, even historically and culturally, that we're not including. But also, so first of all, it's like, where are we calling violence? We do a lot of glumping things into one basket, and then we just dismiss them as the thing that's wrong, terrible, mean, awful, and vicious. But then if we broaden the conversation to like, well, consciousness actually just includes everything. It includes violence. It includes wrong, terrible, mean, awful, vicious, right things. It includes everything. It includes allowance. It includes not allowance. It includes everything. And so I think the bigger conversation is like, for what reason are we only giving ourselves two choices, first of all? And second of all, what is it that we are calling something that is or isn't? Like, and really when you zoom out even from that, it's like, when you do limit your world to only two choices, should I stay or should I go? Should we hit people or should we not hit people? Then the thing you're looking for is the definition that makes your world safe and predictable, which doesn't actually exist. Safe and predictable doesn't actually exist. If you cut off your awareness and go, this thing is unacceptable, and then you can never be aware of when somebody's going to do that thing, because you've like, this energy is an energy I will not allow in my world, which means you allow yourself to be aware of it, and you're always going to be at the effect of it. So it's like the gift to me of inclusion, which is going, okay, all energies, ooh, that one, that's different, is that you get to have access to it in all ways. You get to recognize when it's happening. You get to have access to it as a creative possibility. You get to know when it's truly going to damage you or someone else or not. I mean, you get to have the clarity that you absolutely refuse when you go into black and white.
Yeah.
For what reason? Mostly because we don't know any better.
Well, yeah. And I mean, we go into this very binary thinking of it's either this or that. And that's something, that's taught in psychology too, as like a cognitive limitation, when we are saying like, it's either this or that, and there is no gray area. And something that's taught, especially a lot in the spiritual community here, is like, use discernment, use the judgment light to discern what is right and wrong. And I really would love for you to kind of elaborate more on this idea of like how we actually block what we could be aware of when we're going into judgment, because that's like gold right there. And I think something to extrapolate on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you guys are interested in any kind of freedom from triggers, from, the highs and lows of this, cycle of feelings, a really amazing book is called The 10 Keys to Total Freedom. And it's written by Gary Douglas and Dr. Dane here. One of the keys to freedom, not rightness. And I do think that's important to state out loud. It's not that this is a key to being right in the world. Consciousness is not the new rightness. It's not the new spirituality. It's a key to freedom. Is no judgment, no discrimination, no discernment. Now, discrimination and discernment are just judgment light. They're like, I'm more like a champagne girl, I'm not a beer drinking girl. I'm like a champagne girl, and I totally get it. Like,
of judgment.
Right? It's just that judgment light, but it's still judgment. And so, does that mean you can't choose champagne if you want champagne? No, fucking have champagne if you want champagne. Just don't kid yourself that it's justified. It's just a choice.
Yeah.
Choices. Well, I'm for no violence because, there we go, here goes your judgment, because I'm for a world of love and peace. Well, that's what's called a utopian ideal. Utopian ideals do not exist, no matter how bad we want them to. What's really true is that if you look at nature and the earth includes everything. I mean, animals eat each other. That exists,
Yeah.
crushes in on itself, and everything dies. It about what dies. It just changes, and things die, and then new things grow. There is no judgment in nature. So that indicates to me that it has to have at some point been invented. For what purpose was it invented? For what purpose are we continuing to do it? Like, you and I talk a lot about a lot of things, but one of the things we, both do is business,
Yeah.
And so, I mean, what's your experience of when you go into judgment about yourself and your business? Does it work better?
No, it goes into like major contraction, and then I don't have access to me and my creativity because I'm going into like, I should do it this way, and this is the right way, and this is what people want to hear. And it's like, it totally demolishes, it destroys everything. And it's funny because like that question you asked our group, like in our business group, of like, oh, like for what purpose am I doing this? Like business in general or whatnot.
What am I doing this for?
Yeah. What am I doing this for? Like such a great, and so I wrote about it, and it kept coming in: freedom, 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 freedom. I just wanted freedom to choose, freedom to be, freedom to, and it was nothing about this is the right thing to do. I mean, once I kind of really got to the root of it, it was like, just what is that? What is that energy?
Do you want to know something interesting about freedom? It's not something you feel or stumble into. It's something you choose now.
Yeah.
It's actually something you are. And so the thing that we negate with judgment is what we are. We are already free. We are already capable. We already can. We already have. We live in a magnanimous universe. We can have and ask for and choose anything and everything at will. Guess what we eliminate when we judge? Everything that we are.
Yeah.
All of that. Yeah. So like for me, when I saw what Will did, I was like, fuck yeah, that energy, like not judging yourself, not stopping yourself, he did that. I don't care if it was staged or not. He did that in front of a bazillion people. You risked his entire reputation. It may or may not have been staged or not a thinking thing. It could have been a reaction. All that stuff could be true, but I was like, that willingness to go, that willingness to choose, that willingness to go, don't you fucking do that on my watch in front of a bazillion people. I'm like, I'll have that. What a fucking gift. And so in a world of no judgment, everything's a gift. And then I looked at Chris Rock's world and I was like, well, he's willing to say shit too that gets him slapped. Am I doing that? Or am I judging everything that I say so that I can be the nice girl, the uncontroversial one, the person that everybody likes? Am I forming myself via judgment into the thing that I've decided will be the acceptable thing in the world? Both of them. I'm like, yeah, baby. Woo, we've got action, And so it's like, that's what you have access to in a world beyond judgment, of like, you get the invigoration of every single energy without the discrimination of it, which eliminates the gift of everything, blah, blah.
Yeah. Well, it's so like in neurolinguistic programming, I know we've talked about this before, but the idea being that any belief that you're holding, that will just be continued to be reflected back to you in your reality, because our brains will quite literally just delete, distort, and generalize incoming information that doesn't match it. So it's like, if we're holding in a judgment about this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad, then it's like, that's all we will see. We won't even be open to other possibilities. And I sense that that's where some folks, we like struggle with that when we go a little unconscious and we just kind of get sucked into all of like whatever the drama of things, that then we're not actually like zooming out to seeing what else is possible, which is a sense of like what I was getting you were doing to like actually see what it was creating.
Yeah. And also like, yeah. And I guess it's really, I think if we bring this back down to a personal level for fun, the thing that is relevant to me about creating a world of no judgment for myself is that in that world, I can choose, I can be.
Yeah.
I created for myself, grew up in, and then created for myself this world where I was constantly judging whether or not what I was doing was right. And for the most part, I was constantly failing from my own point of view. And that's what that creates. I remember going through Bible school. I was 25 when I moved to the southern United States and went to this really incredible little school. And
no judgment there in the Bible school.
No. Yeah. But it was also really different. Like, it wasn't a typical Bible school anyway, so that's the whole thing. But I ended up needing to go see the church counselor pretty regularly, because the thing that was still very active in my world was how hard I was on myself. Every single time I would go to choose something, I was like beating myself up, like to within an inch of my life. I was destroying myself every single time it came to anything, any blip in life. And that's how I lived. That was my life. To where at 36, I wanted to kill myself because I could not figure out how to be happy. And it's because in that reality where you are constantly judging whether or not you're right or wrong, you can't be happy. That isn't a choice you have available, because if you're happy, how will you know if you're right? You'll just be happy.
Whoa. Yeah, so much.
So well, yeah. So with rightness and wrongness as my primary need, I could not choose happiness, because then I wouldn't be able to maintain this thing that, of course, was the way more valuable thing, which was this constant violence on myself, and the person who never got to be was me. What I've gotten access to through Access is like where I get to fuck things up. I get to say shit. I get to slap people. I get to get the awareness of all that. I mean, Will Smith's going to get to find out if that destroys his future. The Academy may rescind his Academy Award. That may, he may not get hired again. It may have destroyed his future. We don't know yet. Choice will create awareness for sure. Mm-hmm. So was it right or wrong? It was definitely choice. I got a lot of pleasure out of it. What it will create for him, we get to see. And so there it goes. It's like, if we don't judge, we get the pleasure of all choices rather than the contraction of needing to be
yeah, no, I mean, especially, as I told you, kind of growing up as a ballet dancer and doing all that, and beyond the most judgment, like A, your body's not right, B, your, technique is not right.
Your technique is,
everything's wrong. And it's like usually
you're
focused
wrong.
on, you're wrong. You inherently wrong. And that's just drilled into you, and you're staring at a mirror for hours looking at yourself, and it just totally forms that. And so, because I've been really looking at that and just in business now, what does it take to really get out of judgment, to not be using outside reference points to be saying, well, now you did a good job because you have the liked comments or you have the followers. Because even on social media, we have YouTube has the like, dislike. I think they got rid of the dislike, but do you mean it's so focused on just all this judgment, and what is that really creating? Is it creating greater, and is it creating the world we want? I mean, that's really just to look at that when we get out of just kind of the one, episode, let's say, that was
is it creating the world we want? And I would even if that's too big of a conversation, I know for me in the very beginning, I was like, I don't give a fuck about the world. I just want to be happy. So it's, but even if that's where you're at, is it creating the world you want to live in internally? You constantly looking at whether or not you are right or wrong. How is that affecting you that you've never really acknowledged? For me, it was my normal. That was my normal was unhappiness. That was just what was normal. That was the thing I didn't know how to change, because what I didn't know is that I didn't have to judge myself for everything. So once I could start to change the self-judgment, which of course was a fucking process, that's when I got access to the other choices I really did have. And so is judging yourself creating the world you want to live in inside of you or not? Yeah. And what would you have to demand of yourself? What change would you have to make? What tool would you have to start to implement to have a different reality internally? And the thing about us, even if you only have the bandwidth to focus here, the cool thing is that ends up changing the world anyway, because the more of us that actually are willing to let go of judgment, the more the world has more space to thrive. The more of us that go into this polarity of this is right and this is wrong, the more we destroy the earth. And that's the thing that's just unacceptable to me anymore. Not on my watch. Yeah. And you may not be there. You may just be I just want to be happy.
Well, if we simply look at kind of what we were talking about earlier, before we even jumped on, regarding the judgment actually creating the trauma response in the body or activating the nervous system, right? It's the judgment, ultimately any self-judgment or projected judgment, any of it, we are creating some sort of fight, flight, freeze response in our body. And it's what is that creating? Is that is that going to create the reality you want if you're constantly in this tense, contracted state? you don't have access to your creative centers, that thing, right? Your creative centers in the brain to get creative or to create. What you're saying is it just starts to trickle out into the world. Like it starts here with us being able to get out of that, and then how it's going to just impact everything and every interaction we have following that.
Yeah. And one of the things we say in Access that I just love is that the healing is actually the side effect of consciousness. I think a lot of us go after healing as its own thing, but healing is actually a side effect. One of the things I've been really actively working with myself on is where this one particular trigger that I do, I go into a massive judgment around this one thing. And that's been this huge trigger for me for like the last 8 months. And I've been using that as the justification for the explosion that comes after, which you could apply what I just said to anything that you have a judgment about. If you have a judgment about violence, then you're justified in reacting to violence. If you have a judgment about arrogance, then you're justified in reacting to arrogance. But I was seeing its effects on me and my relationship and the person that I kept saying I cared about. And I was doing this reaction, and that was the thing that kind of kept wedging me, is like, this is justified in my world based on this and this, but its effect on things is really damaging. So does it matter then if it's justified? And this is a hard conversation to have with yourself. It's like brutal honesty with self is what will get you to what you can really choose, that you'd rather choose, the world you'd rather create beyond what is justified. And so I started using this one tool that we were just gifted in the Access Consciousness Foundation class this last weekend, which is this right here. What point of view am I defending or avoiding that keeps this in existence? And everything that is times a godzillion, I destroy and uncreate it all. Right, wrong, good, bad, POC, POC, online, shorts, boys, and beyonds. And that's the clearing statement. You can go to theclearingstatement.com. But I used that clearing on every energy that was coming up, where I wanted to fight, or I wanted to react, or I wanted to go into depression, or anything that was an activated nervous system state. Yeah. I just use that. What's so interesting is and so you don't have to have any cognition about that, as I would use it on those activations, they went away. And I'm like, oh, so is it the point of view that creates is it the activation that creates the point of view, or the point of view that creates the activation? I'm like, apparently it's the point of view that creates the activated nervous system. And a point of view is just a judgment about something. And I was like, oh. So that's interesting, because I was right into, I'm tapping, I'm like breathing. Yep. I was doing all the things, and I'm grateful for all the things because they contribute something. But I was like, but what's the fast track to? So I was like,
give me the fast. Yeah.
So I'm going to sprinkle this clearing on everything. I'm just going to do point of view. Am I avoiding or defending that keeps us in existence? And so I kept doing that with the clearing statement, and I got access to the healing, the space of me that I couldn't get access to any other way. So I don't know exactly what my point is, but that's the gift of going, judgment, never mind. Judgment, no matter what it is, any judgment. Yeah. Because that's the thing that keeps you in that unhappy reactive.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you're just in the ones, it's like, is this the root? Is this the root? Is this the root? Wait. And it's like, if I let go of judgment and this changes and makes more ease, then for what purpose would I not choose it? It's funny because in psychology, we've been talking a lot about how it's like, it's like nervous system, even underneath the anxiety, the PTSD, whatever the heck the diagnoses is, there's some sort of activated nervous system, even in physical issues as well. Yes. And then we're looking at, wait a second, what is triggering the nervous system? Less some sort of point of view that we're holding on to. And then the nervous system gets that freaky vibration. And then it's like the mind matches it and goes on this crazy hamster wheel. Right, exactly that. And it's like, then it just attracts more and more and more of those judgment point of views, because you're on that radio station of Judgmental Central 102.7,
And now we're doing right judgment for you. So it's like we've switched from this set of judgments to now we're doing consciousness as judgment. And I'm like, wait a minute, we missed the point.
I'm so conscious because I'm doing life right.
I'm making conscious choices. I'm doing a world of love and peace. And that's not consciousness. Consciousness includes violence. So do you? And how would your world change if you did? How would your world, and also, with you and I talking a lot about business and money and all of those places where it's so easy to go into that judgment of ourselves, it's like, how would your world change if you included the you that thinks scarcity is real? How would your world change if you included the you that you think should be performing differently? If you just included that you that you've just been busy beating, and you included that you, how would your world change? Like, how much of you do you exclude because you think you should be different? You think you should be better at this, greater at this, more at this, farther along than you are. And so we just violent ourselves out of existence. And so then we wonder why we have a hard time. Because well, mostly because three-quarters of you is over in that corner bleeding from your hand.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's okay. That's okay. Yeah. Will Smith hitting Chris Rock in public, that's not okay. We saw that. It's out loud. Yeah. That's bad. But you beating yourself, that's normal. That's okay. What the fuck? So
literally,
I'm on a mission to fucking change that as a reality. Why is that okay? That is not okay anymore. And it's not okay from me to me either anymore.
Yeah.
Like I am like actively seeking. So it's like, what would change in your world if you included if you included all these energies? Does that mean you are a doormat? No, fuck no. Is it okay with me that someone comes in and just hits me randomly? No. But because I'm included. I'm not right or wrong. That's just not what I do in my world. You can't do that in my world. Get out of my house with muddy boots. Right or wrong? I don't care. We don't do that in my world.
Well, yeah, it's like what energy is required, right? And I just keep getting images of like packs of dogs and how like, the leader of the pack is the assertive, calm, cool, collected, and is also not afraid to snarl and like snap and whatever is required, right? Growl to like be like, yo, get in line. You can't be like this. You can't act like this. This is not okay.
Same with stallions. Yes, exactly. They're if you look at horse herds, we look at horse herds and we're like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. I mean, they're aggressive.
Yeah.
Birds. You guys don't know this about birds, but birds are territorial. Birds like dive.
They dive bomb, right? Yeah.
They dive bomb other birds. They kill other birds that get into their territory. And we're like, oh my God, birds are so beautiful. They're so loving. No, they're not. They're violent. So who's deluded? Who is deluded here? The birds or us? Like, are we actually looking at what is? No, we want the world to be some utopia, but it isn't. It's everything. We are everything. I am everything. I am violent to myself. I'm mean. I'm a cunt. I'm awesome. I'm generous. I'm caring. I'm everything. I'm good, bad, and ugly. And when I'm willing to be an allowance, not acceptance of that. Acceptance is judgment.
Right.
Allowance of like, I'm all of it. I can be the greatest asshole and the most caring beneficiary of freedom,
Well, it's like that. I mean, and to me, that's ultimate consciousness because, a lot of people say when they point the finger and say, I would never be that. I would never do that. That's right. And it's like, that's your shadow. That is, the definition of shadow is when you ignore that piece of you or that capability that you could be. And so then of course you block yourself again from the awareness, what we've been talking about earlier, because you judged it as wrong and you would never be it.
Do you know what's really funny about the things you would never be? It's the things you're secretly being to yourself that you won't admit. And if you would admit it, would give you access to the power of it.
Yeah.
So what are you being that you won't acknowledge? That if you would acknowledge it would give you total freedom. And everything you judge, you do. So if you judge it, you are it, or you've been it in some lifetime. And if you would allow yourself to release the judgment of it, which you can use that tool in the middle of the episode, you get access to you. So.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like with this whole scenario situation, it's like it can't be distilled down just to a soundbite. And that's kind of like in the sense of if people just do a one sentence Twitter or one, you know what I mean? It's like there's just so much that goes into it depending on people's points of view.
Right.
And
feel free to soundbite it. I mean, also, so I think that just if we wrap this up, it's like, what would it take to create a world where you get to be you no matter what that is? You know, what would it be like to live in a world where you get to be you, no matter what that is, in whatever moment? You know, what if you could create that for yourself? What if we could be that we wish other people were for us? What if we could be that for ourselves and the rest of the people around us now? What would that change? And you have a really cool membership that explores these things. It's the courage to choose.
The courage to choose. Yeah, we are exploring these things all in a really different way, in the sense of folks, you know, stepping out of people pleasing, being willing to be seen and heard, and say the thing, set the boundaries, or do what's required so that you can have the freedom to live your life as you. What about you? What do you have going on?
Well, infinitebeingschool.com, you guys, if you want a taste of these tools, if you want to start really tasting freedom and having you, go to infinitebeingschool.com. Absolutely. And I have a foundation class coming up. You only need a bars class to join. If you want to explore spirit awareness, I have a talk to the entities class coming up, all access consciousness. I have a taste of business coaching with me coming, crystaljoycrawford.com/a taster month. So lots of things. You can go to my website, just go to infinitebeingschool.com. That'll take you there. But yeah, so much choice.
And let us know what else you want us to talk about, because, you know, we're here just exploring kind of whatever energy is coming up. So
we'll talk about it. Okay. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.